Hi, I'm Dawn Wink, and I thank you. First of all, thank you so much for choosing to spend this time together. And I'm going to talk today about a combination of methodology and theoretical framework that, and I know the word transformative gets bantied about quite a bit, but I have to tell you, I actually did have this experience with this combination. So let me share my screen. We all live sharing our screens now, don't we? And we shall dive in. So let's see here. Okay. So again, transdisciplinary and creative research through scholarly personal narrative and Lilyology. Like many of us, I lead a very transdisciplinary life. And what I have discovered is the combination of scholarly personal narrative and Lilyology allows and structures and us to convey that transdisciplinarity into our writing. So let me tell you a little bit about, just to ground our time together, the intention of this inquiry. I discovered years ago that my particular academic field, which is multilingual education, linguistic human rights, and ecolinguistics, which I'm wildly passionate about. I read loads there, but I'm also a creative writer. And I also am a voracious, passionate reader of landscape literature. And what I noticed is that what we are finding in linguistic human rights, the research, the knowledge, that's so important and so vital to global sustainability is staying within academia. And in my readings of landscape literature, most of what it focuses on as far as landscape tends to be physical and geographical. And my hope is to take this knowledge and research within academia and infuse non-academic, creative nonfiction literature. And that is my hope. And so when I'm gonna share my inquiry question primarily to ground our conversation, but whatever your own area of research is, I hope you will insert this. And I took that photo on a run one morning. I'm a runner and I have approximately 1,382 photos of sunrises because I live in New Mexico. How can exploring stories at the intersection of landscape and linguistic literatures through engaging wildness, beauty, and imagination contribute to the global movement toward eco-linguistic justice? So again, insert whatever your inquiry is. The methodology, scholarly personal narrative. Gosh, the beauty of recording these and doing these on the video is you can like take a screenshot of anything that may interest you, but because this is such a snippet. Scholarly personal narrative falls under the umbrella of narrative inquiry, as understood by Cresswell, as understood by many, but it is basically that the narrative method begins with the experiences as expressed in lived and told stories of individuals. The epistemology of scholarly personal narrative, when done well, combines scholarship, personal stories, and universalizable themes and insights in a seamless manner. This is what I loved about and continue to love about scholarly personal narrative is in my own experiences, I either lived in the academic world with our norms and ways of writing, or I lived in my creative writing world, both fiction and nonfiction, with those norms. But I felt like I had to compartmentalize who I was and who I am according to whichever world I was living in. For me, it is all connected. And so what scholarly personal narrative allows is for me to bring these selves of myself together. There's the vigor, as we say, of academia and the creative prose of creative writing. Academic writing, let's admit it, is pretty dense, is pretty discipline specific, and unless one is in the field where you're reading it, it's pretty unapproachable. It can be. So what this allows is to convey that in ways that opens it to a broader readership. Scholarly personal narrative combine. Let's talk about the steps or the structure: pre-search, me-search, research, and we-search. So for all you researchers out there, here are some terms that we use in scholarly personal narrative: vigor rather than rigor, subjective experience rather than experimental design, personal testimony instead of evidence, perspectives over data, universalizability rather than replicability, introspective questions rather than interview questions, according to my experience acknowledges limitations, plausibility, honesty, coherence replaces hypotheses, and illustrative embedded references replaces literature reviews. Now, and this is Nash and Bradley 2011. I must say, I do love a literature review. So I love others, I loved mine. So that's the path that I went down. But let's start with the pre-search. Is there some pivotal belief that you hold enough to dedicate the time and energy? Like, what are you passionate about? Basically, what are you passionate about? For me, I knew early on that I was passionate about bringing what we know about the loss of languages, about linguicide, about linguistic imperialism into, and the connection between language and landscape into the realm of of landscape literatures. As my dissertation chair told me early on, she said, Dawn, what is going to make you turn off Netflix and write? And so what is that question for you? And there's just a smidgen of them. I am a journal writer. I have 25 plus years of journals, which clearly must be decorated and look pretty and have gorgeous quotes. At least for me, that's not saying anything about anybody else. So for me, my pre-search started in going back through all of those years of journals and looking for themes, what emerged: language, landscape, wildness, beauty, and imagination, and color coding them. I went through, I can't even begin to tell you how many colored pens and sticky notes. The me search. Okay, what do you particularly bring? What is it that you bring to your research that nobody else in the world brings, or very few? I knew pretty early on that what I bring is this academic background in ecolinguistics, in linguistic human rights and multilingualism, and a passion for place-based narrative, fiction and nonfiction. And in my readings in these realms, there are biologists, there are people who are wildly passionate about global sustainability. And landscape is primarily interpreted through its geographical and physical elements. And my hope is to integrate language as an element of landscape in these realms. The research, this is your lit review. These are the scholars and the writers who you read, who you love, who inform your knowledge and understandings. Now, I also looked at what are the key scholarly themes that emerged from my research, and that came from the lit review. Again, more sticky notes, more pretty pens. For me, these are the themes that emerged, which will differ from what yours are. And I connected, so I had the themes that emerged from my literature review, and the themes that emerged from studying these 25 plus years of journals. All were color coded with the same colors. For me, I chose, it was the 5: language, landscape, wildness, beauty, and imagination. And I brought those together and created 5 scholarly personal narratives with those themes. Now, the research, that's what we're doing right now. What are the implications for the fields of study of others? Oh gosh, I hope you're feeling some of that. It is that through scholarly personal narrative, you may be able to convey to a broader audience what you are learning, and you have the credibility of both. This is another thing, because I wanted the credibility from landscape literature, and the credibility from my academic peers is really important to me. And that is what scholarly personal narrative provides. And then one of the most amazing discoveries from my research is the discovery of Lilyology from our colleague, Dr. Narita Blair, an Indigenous scholar in Australia. What she has done is incredible, a transformative framework and storytelling practice to decolonize critical ethical spaces. When I read about Lilyology, I needed to be able to visualize it. So I grabbed my watercolors and I painted it. So here are a few of the primary. The brick wall represents traditional Western academia, where basically very few stories have been valued. Those tend to be Western, white, and male. The lily represents the variety of story. Each petal represents the story. The sweet potato represents the nourishing center of deep knowings. And as my mom said, another professor and academic, honey, my brick wall keeps getting in the way of the sweet potato. So Lilyology is grounded in story. Lilyology is grounded in the multiplicity of voices and all stories, and is completely grounded in academic findings and knowings and research. And so we can integrate these within academia and also beyond. I love this, a deep time in a storied landscape that has been held in place by the roots of Indigenous wisdom. Here is the very specific process that I went through in order to, for my particular inquiry. Again, the beauty of this is we can screenshot, exploring, finding themes, color coding, writing, and then analyzing the data through Lilyology to ensure that what was also being represented, in addition to the themes that came from the Lit Review, were the specific components from Lilyology: the brick wall, the water lily, the nourishing sweet potato, the connective fibers of spider webs. My hope, I'm now submitting these narratives for publication. My hope they will serve as seed bombs, growing in places that were previously inaccessible. Storytellers ought not be too tame. Conclusions and beginnings. So my hope is that while our time together is concluding, and when my dissertation concluded, it is just, yes, and there's your research, but it's also the beginning of sharing with the world. And so I'm so grateful for the time that we shared together. Please feel free to reach out, Dawn at dawnwink.com, and thank you so much.